Howdy y'all, I just finished painting the tracks, but I'm gonna take you inside for episode 1 of the cat house. We're definitely gonna go over these old Caterpillar pamphlets a little bit later, but first, I want to unbox something a viewer sent. And I know, the lighting's a little bit off up here. I got a lot of work to do. I got a lot of things to clean up, but I thought I'd go ahead and get it started. Dad and I were overwhelmed by the quality construction of this box alone. Before I open this thing up, I mean, you really just got to take the time to appreciate the quality construction that went into this box, because what's inside of here, and I know what's inside, was worth putting in a box like this. And even the edges are beveled, the screws are countersunk, and Dad and I were just blown away by this box alone. So let's do it. Let's see what's inside here. Oh boy, I have goosebumps. I'm so excited about this because this is amazing, really. Truly amazing, and a fantastic channel subscriber and viewer that wanted to help us out, that really cares about caterpillars and preserving history. And you can believe that these are going to be preserved. And I think a lot of you already know what these are. And I was wondering if I was going to put them on our 7U, but I really think that these are going to look great on Carl. Specifically because they are already OD green. Now we have to think about that one. Absolutely beautiful. These are original Caterpillar lights. And these are going to look amazing on either 5T or 4G, and I am thinking 5T on that 5-roller wide track. We're going to paint OD green, 1945. These are OD green. I mean, oh, that's beautiful. Look at the wire guards on the front of them. Absolutely beautiful. And Bill, these will be well loved, cared for, and appreciated, and put to use. And of course, we've got 3 of them because the machines have 2 on the front and then 1 facing backwards towards the drawbar or your implement or whatever you're running in the back. How cool is this? I have goosebumps. This absolutely made my day. Bill, thank you, thank you, thank you. These will be well loved, preserved for generations. They are going to go back in this box to be safely kept until we can get them on to 5T or our 7U toolbar. I think these are going to go on 5T. They just have to. The OD green totally sealed the deal. So those lights have been sitting, they sat in the post office for quite some time. And I never got notified. We went in there looking for it several times, and they said there was no package. But eventually, my wife was able to go in there and talk to them, and we found it. And I'm glad we did. And they've been sitting here for a few days because I've been outside trying to get the painting done on 4G, and we are completely done. So we're ready to put it together. And we wanted to get that painting done before the custom cutters roll through here. And we are cutting it down to the hour here. So everything's painted. I had initially thought about calling this area the LAOL Lounge, but I kind of thought the cat house would have a little bit more appeal to it and a little bit more fun. I've got a lot of work to do in here, and to be honest, I haven't really done much since I talked about it on the members only, but I got a lot to do. I'm going to catch up with it this winter. I'm definitely going to put some more light in here to make it a little bit more, I don't know, less dingy. Kind of looks like a dungeon up here. Since we're so close to being done with the project, we're about ready to put decals on it as soon as we get it together. And I've been collecting a lot of the old sales brochures from Caterpillar, D4s specifically, ads, things like that. I find most of them on eBay. In fact, all of them I've found on eBay. But I found this one. This is really interesting. It's even got a little cutout here. You know, I'm interested in a D2 that pulls 3 to 4 bottom plow, or a 22 that pulls 3 to 4 bottom plow, which we have. A 5 to 6 bottom plow diesel D4, or a 6 to 8 bottom plow diesel D6. So I found that kind of curious, and this talks about the speed and the capacity and the economy of using a Caterpillar product. One thing that's been super hard to actually put my finger on is actual cost of one of these tractors new. And this is a brochure. This is for a 7U. Yes, you can tell by the engine on here. I asked on the Caterpillar forums, how much was a new tractor, say in the 30s, 40s? And the closest answer I got was in 1948, a Caterpillar D2 was right around $4,000. Adjusted for inflation today, that comes out to about $52,000. One thing I found interesting and distinctly unique from these tractors is, even though they're showcasing or selling the new 7Us, there's pictures inside of here that are older models. There's even 4Gs, 5Ts, 7Js, 4Ts, 2Ts, I mean, you name it. But a lot of these showcase a lot of the options you could buy. And there's my awesome belt pulley. This is the 2-speed one, a canopy option. Here's satisfied owners. There's an orchard model up there. And I could spend hours in these every day. You can see up here on the later 7Us, the track chains are entirely different. So a lot of really cool detail. A lot of things really haven't changed. They showcase the bearings that are in the outer final drives and the newer outer final drives that are like on our 5Ts and such. There's a a narrow stance tractor, just like 4G. And there's always a really cool cutaway in here that shows the whole tractor. And Dad and I know that pretty well. Now, this is a D315. This is a newer engine than our D4400 that we're working on. This tractor was advertised at 43 drawbar horsepower and 48 belt horsepower. Now, this is the 7U, the bigger engine. But the reason I got all these was to research decals, and well, they're cool. But this is a 7U, so that's not really going to help us with the 4G little lefty. This is another 7U brochure, but what I found interesting about this one is this page in the very back that has specifications. So again, 43 drawbar horse and 48 belt horse. Talks about drawbar pull, pounds. The engine is a 350 cubic inch engine. It talks about the steering clutch discs. There's 16 of them. The track widths you could get, different shoes, grousers, overall height. The length of the D4 7Us were 10 foot and 1/4 length and 5 foot 9 3/8 of an inch high to the air intake and the exhaust. The length of tracks. Area contact with the ground with the 13-inch track like we're putting on 4G is 1,589 square inches. A lot of really good and fascinating detail. Now, there's a picture in here, and now we're getting a little closer because this is showing old D4s that customers are happy with. And we have one here, and I can tell by the air cleaner that this is probably a 7U. And that decal on the back of the seat is the D4 with the whiskers up on top of the tag. And this has the side tank like our 4G lefty, but this is still a little different and a little newer, so I don't think that's going to apply to us. And we didn't have any of those D4 stickers on lefty. Up next, I have a maintenance guide, and this is for D6, D4, and D2 tractors. Now, this is probably mid to late 50s, so probably not going to have the information that we're looking for, but also a good read. And they were really into the comic style of narration in these books, which is really neat. And you can tell by the fashions of the era, the 40s, 50s. And you can see a engine here. It's getting tired, needs water, it's hot, and talks about overheating and cooling system and how they work. So a lot of really handy stuff in here. Pictures of the cat mechanics. And yeah, I love this old Acme Construction Company. They got it painted yellow. Taking a dozer out to a job and talking about maintenance costs with the mechanics at Caterpillar. Again, this one doesn't help us too much with our decals. Here I have a really cool operator handbook. And this one is narrated by Indiana Jones.
That belongs in a museum!
No, not really. Anyway, this tells you different techniques for grading and pulling carryalls and scrapers, and there's a big Caterpillar Scarfire and how to use it, and there's your cat in a can, as they used to call them, scrapers, carryalls, and Granddad had a lot of experience with those in the Army up in Alaska, and sheep's foot compactors, different techniques. There's a self-propelled carryall scraper. This is probably at the beginning of those. Road graders, probably number 12. Dad, when he was a kid, he used to watch them push scrapers with D8s all the time. He used to just go sit and watch them. And different techniques for slot dozing, do's and don'ts. Here, Indiana Jones is telling you don't do this way and that way and whatnot. A lot of safety things, but still very valuable information today. Again, not super useful for determining our decals, but yes, I sit and go through these. I love them. This is a Grain the Caterpillar Way booklet, and I found this one very interesting because of the very front of this. There's kind of a cool logo about putting yourself in the picture right here. And this is getting to be closer to our era. So this is getting to be probably 40s. Here's a D2 pulling, looks like a 4-bottom plow. And there's a old D6. Here they're pulling 2 one-ways, which we have one out there. We're going to get it out with lefty. Now, if you look very carefully, I think, and I cannot tell, I think that says D4. So that is getting close to lefty. There's no tag on the back of the seat, and it's got the Whisker logo over the Caterpillar diesel, and down at the bottom it's got the Peoria, Illinois. It's very, very hard to see, and I like the advertising here. This guy plowed a section in 5 days at a fuel cost of $8.75 with a D4. This is an old newspaper cutout that was in this when I got it, that somebody cut out, but I found on the back of it there's a bunch of thrashing machines. It looks like they got maybe Fordsons or D's. I can't really tell, but that was kind of interesting. Somebody had it as a placeholder. So up here we have a D2, and that is a seat tank. Here's a D4 with the cab, and this has the very, very tall intake that they had, and he's pulling a very large implement. I think a spring tooth, I can't really tell, or a chisel. Here's some drills. They're pulling with a RD4, so very cool there. Here's another D2 with that very large intake on the engine. An Orchard model down here, another Orchard model, more spring tooths. That looks like a 6 maybe. This talks a lot about economy and fuel costs. And what do we have? Here's a D4. Now we're getting closer to our area. That one very much looks like lefty, and you can see they got a belt-driven implement pumping water from this river. But you can tell by the final drives and where the intake is. And no D4 whiskers on the side of the toolbox. I've seen a lot of those. I don't think that I'm going to do that. I definitely not. But, yep, belt pulley. This one looks exactly like lefty. And this is really neat. So that is what we want lefty to look like when we get it done. And ours has all the guards, everything. 100% complete. Here's a D2 pulling a combine. Early combine. More plows, chisels. Here's a cutaway talking about the bellow seals and why they're better. This looks like a D2. Up here, they're pulling a scraper, or a little carryall, or a roller, can't tell. Cameraman got a lot of good pictures of that day when they were combining, using that, pulling that John Deere combine with that Caterpillar D2. And this talks about their air cleaner intake system, keeping it cool with the water pump. Here they are running a thrashing machine with a D2, which I would love to do with Lefty when we get it done. But that's it in this one. On a side note, this smell reminds me of Grandma's house. It just smells like Grandma's house. You're probably asking, why didn't you just Google pictures of the D4s? Well, there's not a lot of pictures of Caterpillar D4s from the 4G series. They're very rare, and considering our 4G 9986, they only made like 86 of them in 1939, which brings us to the next book. And that being said, the ones that are still around, a lot of them have been repainted, and they're not necessarily like they were when they came out of the factory. So then one day, my diligence on eBay paid off, and I found this brochure, and a fellow was selling it whose dad had collected them and recently passed away. And this is for a 1939 D4. Exactly like our 4G. And handwritten on here, they're saying that somebody's D4 about 1939 was worth about $1,600, which is exactly, I think, what the fella I bought it from paid for it. So that was used. Anyway, let's open it up. So we start with pictures of the engine, the pony motor. You can see it's got the open exhaust like ours. It doesn't have the pony motor exhaust that goes around the intake for the main engine, just like our 4G. And it talks in here, there's that old fuel tower that we had on our 4G, the fuel pump that we had, the lift pump. Everything on here is just like it was on our 4G when we took it apart. Over here, there's a cutaway of the injectors, how they work, and why they're better and whatnot. And the fuel pump right here, here's a cutaway, and that is the part that we readjusted on our 4G Lefty. And here again is the fuel filters, those coiled of like copper or brass, and I have a video on that, so you can check it out. Here's a cutaway of the air intake, air cleaner, just like on our 4G Lefty. And now we have a picture of an RD4 pulling a drill. Here's a cutaway of the engine, and it talks about the bearings like we found in our 4G. And here's the head. All this stuff looks very familiar. It talks about the replaceable cylinder liners, the bronze thrust bearing at the end of the crankshaft and camshafts. And we all know this well, don't we? Talks about how easily it starts, the water system, the filtration systems, the pony motor. And here's some more pictures. And most of these are RD4s, which essentially the same thing as Lefty. Lefty's just at the end of the run after they quit calling them RD4s and just went to D4. This talks about the clutches, the power. I found this very interesting right here. It talks about reverse and forward gear speeds. Reverse is 1.9 miles an hour, first 1.7, second 2.4, third 3, fourth 3.7, and fifth 5.4. That's the forbidden gear. You don't use fifth unless something's on fire or you're on fire. Old school dozer operators will tell you that. You only do that once and then get yelled at for it, and that's the last time you do it. Here's an RD4 with a dozer, dozing. And again, this got the decal. I'm looking at the side tank. I really don't see any decals on that side tank. Now it's washed with a little bit of dirt and debris, so it's hard to tell. This talks about our final drives, which we know very well. We've been through all of that, and the bellows. And here we have the tracks off, and it talks about the rollers and the recoil springs and the sprockets and the bearings and the front idler, how they work, which, again, we've been through. Up here, there's a really neat picture of a D4. I can't tell if it's an RD4, but also a side tank. But I think it is an RD4 because it's got the two carriers up here on the top. At the end of the RD4s, the early D4 runs, they went away and just did the one carrier up at the top. That's one of the few differences between the RD4s and the later D4s. This talks about the frames and how they transfer shock and load. through that to that main pivot shaft. And right here, I've seen a lot of breaks on these old D4s on the frames, especially with dozers. There's talks about the final drive pillow blocks. Now, they later changed these. May have been mid 7Js, early 5Ts or 2Ts. This talks about the spring and how it equalizes the tracks for work. And you can see up here, there's a picture where a guy is plying with an RD4 and he's got one track down in the furrow and he's pulling the plow with the other track up. And there's an Orchard model D4 down here. And here's another side tank D4 plowing. He's pulling a 5 bottom John Deere plow, it looks like. And that looks more like our dirt here. Ours is very hard clay, so you can get away with a few more bottoms where it's a little bit more loamy. And another one similar to ours. So nothing really indicates any difference in the decals than what we found when we took it apart. So we will not be putting the cat whisker decals. If we put one, there'll be just one, and it'll be at the top of the seat, because that is something that I have found on the 4G series D4s that I think we will do. So it'll have the Caterpillar diesel on the side of the hood, the Caterpillar diesel on the back of the seat, maybe the one whisker at the top of the seat, and then, of course, the Made in Peoria at the bottom of the seat. Last page I found very interesting. It's showing, there's my Nemesis, my belt pulley. Now this one's a little different than the one we have. This is, again, the 2-speed one. Mine's a constant one. Orchard model here. And it talks about different options that you can get on your D4. Rear power takeoff, the combination belt pulley PTO was an option. Of course, the Orchard, spark arresters, the belt pulley, bracket for hand controls of Caterpillar Tractor Patrol. So I'm guessing that is for a road grader, pull behind road grader controls. Front bumper you could get, cab, curtains, canopy, doors, engine hood for the doors, extended air cleaner, different grousers with the 44-inch like our lefty is, or the wider gauge, and front pole hooks, different pans, different paint. You could probably negotiate what you needed to, much like tractors today. Very careful to note that these are all supplied only at extra cost. I hope you all enjoyed this first episode of the Cat House, and we have a lot of work to do to get the studio where I'm happy with it. Like, for one, I need to bring that banner down a little bit, and the kitty, the LED kitty over there, she needs to come down too a little bit so you can see her. But I need a different sign-off. I don't want to do the thanks for watching. Hang on. Don't forget to press pause and live in the meow. I'm just kidding around. Those are awful. I'm going to have to think of something. You guys got any suggestions?